Every conspiracy begins with a question someone wasn't supposed to ask.
Why are we afraid of Friday the 13th? Millions of people are. There is a word for the fear, paraskevidekatriophobia. Buildings skip the 13th floor. People avoid flying, signing contracts, getting married on that day. An entire culture flinches at a date on the calendar. And if you ask where it comes from, you will hear again and again the same answer. It goes back to a single Friday the 13th, 700 years ago, when the most powerful secret order in Europe was destroyed in a single morning, when the King of France reached out his hand and in one coordinated strike arrested an entire brotherhood of holy warriors, the Knights Templar. It is a great story. It connects our modern superstition to a real medieval catastrophe. It appears in best-selling novels, in documentaries, in 1,000 videos, and it is almost certainly not true. The arrest happened. That part is real, and we are going to walk through every brutal step of it. It genuinely took place on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307. But the idea that this event gave birth to our fear of the date, that connection appears to be a modern invention, barely a century old, stitched onto the Templars long after the fact. So this episode is two stories at once. The true story of how the Knights Templar really fell, betrayal, torture, fire, and a curse, and the false story of how we came to blame a medieval order for a superstition it never caused. Because the way the Templars actually died and the way we misremember their death are both perfect examples of the same thing: how history becomes myth. Part 1. The richest monks in the world. To understand the fall, you have to understand how high they had climbed. The Knights Templar were founded around 1119, after the First Crusade, for a simple and modest purpose: to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. A small band of warrior monks, men who took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and then rode into battle. That humble beginning did not last. Over the next 2 centuries, the Templars became one of the most powerful institutions in the medieval world. Kings and nobles, grateful for their service and eager for their prayers, showered them with land, money, and privileges. They answered to no king and no local bishop, only to the Pope himself. And they became bankers. This is the part people forget. A pilgrim could deposit money at a Templar house in Europe, receive a coded note, and withdraw the equivalent at a Templar house in the Holy Land. One of the earliest systems of international banking in Western history. The Templars financed wars. They held the treasure of kings. They lent money to the crowns of Europe, including the crown of France. By the early 1300s, the Templars were a state within a state, wealthy, armed, independent, and secretive. Their initiation ceremonies were held behind closed doors, which fed exactly the kind of rumor that secrecy always feeds. And they had a problem they did not yet understand. They had become a fortune without a country, an army without a war. The Crusader states had fallen, and their original mission was gone. They were rich, they were secretive, they were vulnerable, and they were owed a great deal of money by a king who did not want to pay. His name was Philip IV. History would call him Philip the Fair, for his looks, not his conduct. Part 2. The morning of the 13th, Philip IV of France was broke. He had already emptied other pockets to fund his wars. He had seized the assets of Jewish communities and expelled them. He had gone after Italian bankers. He was deeply in debt to the Templars, and he seems to have looked at their vast wealth, their secrecy, and their independence, and seen both a threat and an opportunity. So he prepared, in total secrecy, one of the most remarkable operations of the medieval age. Sealed orders were sent out across France to his officials in every region, with instructions not to open them until a specified moment. When that moment came, at dawn on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307. The orders were opened and executed simultaneously across the entire kingdom. The warrant began with the words, "God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom." In a single coordinated strike, virtually every Templar in France was arrested, hundreds of men, including the Grand Master of the entire order, an old man of around 70 named Jacques de Molay, who, just the day before, had been an honored pallbearer at a royal funeral, walking beside the king. The charges were monstrous, and they followed a script. This was the same catalogue of horrors that medieval authorities had used before against other groups they wished to destroy. The Cathars, the Waldensians. The accused was said to have denied Christ, to have spat or urinated on the cross, to have exchanged obscene kisses during initiation, to have engaged in ritual sodomy, and to have worshipped a mysterious idol, a severed head, which some confessions called Baphomet. These accusations were, almost certainly, fabricated, built from older templates of heresy, adapted to fit and designed to do one thing: justify the seizure of everything the Templars owned. Part 3. Confession, recantation, fire. Then came the torture. The Templars were handed to interrogators who used the full apparatus of medieval coercion. And torture does what torture always does. It does not produce truth. It produces whatever the torturer wants to hear. Man after man confessed. They confessed to denying Christ. They confessed to worshipping idols. Some confessed to things so absurd that they only make sense as the words of a person who will say anything to make the pain stop. Even Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master, confessed. But then something happened that the king did not fully control. Some of them took it back. When they were brought before representatives of the Pope, away for a moment from the king's men, they recanted. They declared their confessions false, extracted by agony. They proclaimed the innocence of the order. Philip's answer was fire. In May 1310, 54 Templars who had retracted their confessions were taken to a field outside Paris and burned alive at the stake. The message was unmistakable, and it worked. Many of those still in prison, watching what happened to men who recanted, hastily reaffirmed that their forced confessions had been true after all. The Pope, Clement V, a Frenchman who owed his position to Philip and operated largely as his instrument, resisted, delayed, and ultimately gave way. In 1312, at the Council of Vienne, he dissolved the Order of the Knights Templar. Not on a verdict of proven guilt, the evidence was never conclusive, but in the language of the decree, to prevent further scandal, the order was simply abolished, its reputation too damaged to survive. Most Templars were released or absorbed into other orders or left to disappear into history, but the leaders remained in prison, and 2 years later, the state came for the last act. Part 4. The Curse of Jacques de Molay. On the 18th of March 1314, Jacques de Molay, now around 77, after 7 years in captivity, was brought before a public assembly in Paris, alongside another senior Templar, to hear his final sentence: life imprisonment. And the old man, who had confessed under torture and reaffirmed it under threat, did something no one expected. In front of the crowd, with nothing left to lose, he took it all back one final time. He declared loudly and publicly that the confessions were lies, that the order was innocent, that the only crime he was guilty of was betraying his brothers by confessing to falsehoods to save his own life. Under the law, this made him a relapsed heretic, a man who had confessed, been absolved, and returned to his error. The penalty was death, and it was immediate. That same evening, de Molay was taken to a small island in the River Seine, in the shadow of Notre Dame, and burned alive over a slow fire. And here the history hardens into legend. According to the tradition that grew up afterward, de Molay called out from the flames. He summoned both the Pope and the King to answer for their crimes before God. Within the year, Pope Clement V died about a month later. King Philip IV died before the year was out, in a hunting accident. Whether de Molay ever spoke those words, we cannot know. The curse appears in later accounts, and legend has a way of arranging itself neatly around events. But the deaths were real, and their timing was close enough that a haunted Europe drew exactly the conclusion you would expect. The men who destroyed the Templars had followed them into the grave within months. The order was gone, but its ghost was just beginning its work. Part 5. The myth that came later. Now we come back to where we started, to the fear of Friday the 13th. Here is what almost every retelling gets wrong. Yes, the Templars were arrested on Friday the 13th. That date is real, but there is no evidence that medieval or early modern Europeans connected that day to bad luck because of the Templars. For centuries, after 1307, nobody seems to have said, "We fear this date because of what happened to the Knights." And that is because the two halves of the superstition are far older than the Templars, and for most of history, completely separate from each other. Take the number 13 first. Its bad reputation runs deep and comes from at least two ancient streams. In Norse mythology, the trickster god Loki crashes a feast in Valhalla as the uninvited 13th guest and sets in motion the death of Balder, the god of light, plunging the world into grief. And in Christianity, Judas is traditionally counted as the 13th to sit down at the Last Supper, the betrayer, the 13th man. From these came a superstition, alive for centuries, that 13 guests at a table means one of them will die within the year. Now take Friday, which was cursed on its own account. In Christian tradition, it is the day of the crucifixion, and by long folklore, the day Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, the day Cain killed Abel, the day of the flood. Chaucer, in the 14th century, already warns against beginning any journey or undertaking on a Friday. Sailors for generations were reluctant to set sail on one, so both pieces are genuinely old.
Monday.
But notice, they are two different superstitions, about two different things, running side by side for hundreds of years without being fused, an unlucky number and an unlucky day, welding them together into a single dreaded unit. Friday the 13th is astonishingly recent. Folklorists can find no real trace of it before the 19th century. The earliest clear references appear in the 1800s. The idea spreads through Victorian culture. A popular 1907 novel called Simply Friday the 13th helps cement it, and the first solid English language references to the specific curse of the date cluster around the early 20th century. That is roughly 600 years after Jacques de Molay burned. The fear, in other words, was assembled from old parts, but assembled long after the Templars were gone, and only once the combined superstition existed did anyone go looking for a dramatic origin story to explain it. So where did the Templar explanation come from? It is a modern graft onto a modern superstition. The idea that Friday the 13th derives from the Templar arrest spread in the 20th century and exploded into global common knowledge in 2003, when it appeared as a confident claim in one of the best-selling novels of all time, Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. Brown did not invent the link, but he broadcast it to hundreds of millions. A satisfying coincidence was presented as a cause, and the world adopted it as fact. Think about what actually happened here. A real event, the arrest, genuinely occurred on that date. A real superstition, fear of Friday the 13th, genuinely exists. And a storyteller connected the two centuries later because the connection was satisfying, because it felt like it should be true. And once that link was made, it became unkillable, for exactly the reasons we have explored in every episode of this series. The lie is a better story than the truth. It gives a random superstition a dramatic origin. It gives the Templars a haunting afterlife. It connects us, standing in a modern elevator with no 13th button, directly to a burning night on an island in the Seine. That is too good to give up, so people don't. Conclusion. The Knights Templar are the opposite of the ghost order we met last time. The Rosicrucians were a fiction that grew into something real. The Templars were something real, powerful, wealthy, absolutely historical, that was ground into fiction. They were destroyed by a bankrupt king who wanted their money using fabricated charges and torture, and abandoned by a pope who lacked the courage to protect them. That is not a mysterious story. It is a depressingly ordinary one. Greed and power dressed up as a holy war against heresy. The real conspiracy here was not the Templars worshipping a demon head. It was a king and a captive pope conspiring to murder an order for its treasure. And then, across the centuries, we did to their memory what Philip did to their bodies. We rebuilt them into whatever we needed. Guardians of the Holy Grail, keepers of secret bloodlines, founders of the Freemasons, the hidden authors of our unluckiest day. Almost none of it true, all of it more thrilling than the facts. The Templars fell in a single morning, 700 years ago, but they never stopped haunting the ones who killed them. And they never stopped haunting us, because we cannot resist rewriting the dead into the shape of our own fascinations. The date on the calendar is not cursed, but the story is sticky, and a sticky story, as we keep learning, will always outrun the truth. This has been Conspiracy Explained, not to debunk, not to mock, to understand. Further sources in the description below. Next, Baphomet. How a confession extracted under torture became the most famous image of the devil in the world.